This is Martin Giles of the Guildford Dragon News, and in the fourth of a series of interviews with local political leaders at Guildford Borough Council, I have James Walsh, the leader of the Labour Party group at GBC. Thank you, James, for joining the Guildford Dragon and agreeing to take part in this interview.
Thanks, Martin.
So we won't waste time. We'll get straight into it. Now, in May, your party won 3 seats in the Guildford Borough Council election, securing a seat in Westborough for the first time since 2011. Previously, Westborough had been a Labour stronghold. So it's interesting that you've lost that position, but now have at least got a foothold back in there. What lessons did you learn from that campaign?
A couple of things. I think primarily hard work and talking to people. I mean, Howard won the seat in when was it, last year, through the hard work he did and speaking to people. He was out incessantly. And to be a politician, you need to speak to people. You need to front them, good times and bad times. You need to hear what they say and respond. And Howard is really good at that. And I think he was awarded by winning that seat. It's we used to control that seat years ago. Obviously, in that interim time, we had a Labour government which was popular, then became very unpopular, and I think that was reflected in some of the local issues. We've also had a rejuvenated Labour Party in the last few years, a lot more motivated activists, a lot more clear planning from people like Sue Hackman, which has really energised the party and activists. And our campaigns are much more focused and focus towards winning seats. We've got a long way to go. There's a long way to go. But in terms of our results in places like Stoke, the new Stoke near up near the Lido, that part of the town, that could come our way next time. The sort of campaign we did this year, especially it was Sue, it was Brian Crease and others. The response we got there is really good, really positive, and it was really different from what we've seen before. So, what you're saying
is the old-fashioned. Sorry to interrupt, but and there's a bit of a lag, I think. But what you seem to be saying is the old-fashioned campaigning methods of talking to people on the doorstep. You think paid dividends for you in the last campaign.
It's always. I mean, I've been a councillor for here and elsewhere for the last 15 years now, and that's how you win elections. You talk to people. You don't shy away from people. If people don't know who you are, you don't speak to you, don't get a feeling for who you are as a person. Leave the politics aside. It's a personal thing. If you don't have that, you can't expect them to vote for you.
That's interesting, James, because you will know as well as I do. There's lots of views. It's all about social media these days.
I think that as a role in that, I'm getting, the older I get, the more of a Luddite I get with social media. Right. I think there's definitely a role for it, and I'm not 100% au fait on how that all works. I mean, there's people out there who know how to use this stuff really well. For me, it's always been that personal stuff. Human beings are very social creatures. That face-to-face work, if we had this meeting in an office facing each other, it'd be much more natural and fluid than it is over what we're doing now over Zoom. It's just that face-to-face personal contact where you have the body language and you can sort of interact with people better. I think that is crucial. And I've seen that time and time again. I've sort of won Conservative voters over just by having conversations, listening to them, and just showing that respect. And it's very powerful.
Okay.
And Howard, just to cite Howard as an example in Westborough, is really good at that. And then that sort of came through in the election.
But let's have a look at an example of how social media might affect election results then. During the campaign, Labour, along with GGG and R4GV, were parties that Robin Horsley advised electors not to support in his widely viewed video, The Battle for Guildford. What effect did the video have on the election result, in your view?
For Labour, I didn't feel much of an impact at all. It never came up in my ward, in Belfields.
And generally?
Generally, I think being impacted on the residents group. I think. I mean, I don't know. I've not seen the stats in terms of how many people watched that video. I mean, it's obviously made a lot of noise on the Dragon in the local press. I'm not sure how powerful it was. I think it did have an impact, and it looks like it had a big impact.
It did get lots of views.
Yeah. But whether people, do we know people change their views on the back of it? I mean, there's issues around the residents group that, they're elected in on 2019 on the back of the local plan. Had they moved sufficiently forward with a new agenda to sort of show what they're about post local plan? I don't know. There's so many factors that went into that election. I think the Robin Horsley thing was a big one, but I'm not sure how big.
Right. Okay. Fair enough.
Certainly not for Labour.
No, I understand. Thank you. Since the election, the parlous state of the Borough Council's finances have become more apparent. and a major accounting error has been revealed, how much of the situation do you think is the council's own fault, and what should have been done differently?
I think it's partly the council's fault and partly the government's fault. So the changes in 2010, when the government started pulling back the revenue support grant, which obviously fed into a lot of local government finances, didn't help. And again, I was a councillor from 2008, so 2 years before that, and I saw just about the difference between when there was money in the system to spend on services and when the money started trickling. And we're at the point now where it's just not there. So money has to be raised from things like parking charges and other things, and investments, which is where the other problem comes in. So a big part of the problem is the sort of the foundations the government have laid over the last, 15 years? I think, 2010, 13 years. That's the basis of it. In terms of Guildford and the council, I think there have been issues within the finance team in terms of oversight and management that are still currently being unearthed and sort of examined. So I'm not sure where we are with that, but there are definitely issues there that could have been done better. And I think that's part of the problem.
It can't have helped that the accounts haven't been properly audited for some years.
No,
I mean,
if you don't,
people probably don't understand how that can happen with a council. Surely auditing is very important.
Yeah, I think the auditing issues are national issues as well. It's not just Guildford that's affected. There's lack of auditors. There's a whole load of structural problems, I think, in the country as a whole, and that's feeding down to local councils. And personally, that's a real concern of mine. I'm not sure how a lot of these issues we're dealing with across the board are going to be dealt with, because it doesn't seem there's any coherence nationally, and that is feeding down to the local level, as we're seeing in Guildford, as we're seeing in Woking, Spelthorne, places like that. It's it's not just a local issue.
What is your party if your party gets in, as widely predicted it will, in the next general election? What are you expecting your party to do to fix those problems?
I don't know. I think we've had 15 years of this. I'm not Keir Starmer, so I don't have I don't have a finger on what's going on at the moment. But I think
what do you hope they will do then?
First of all, look into the funding for local government. I think at the moment, we can't rely on local governments sort of try and raise money through investments.
Because that has huge risk, doesn't it? As we've seen, they
exactly
start taking risks then, like Woking, and eventually it comes back to bite them.
Yeah, and the direction we're going is, are we going to have a local government as we recognise it in years to come? We could actually use this process to maybe get a better form of local government. Whether that means a number of unitary authorities in Surrey, I don't know. There could be options there, but we need to get a way of financing and fixing some of these problems. Again, it's not just Guildford; it's across the country. Birmingham, massive example.
Yeah, and Croydon, and as you say, there's lots of other examples. But do you think that one of this, maybe I think it's an anomaly in this country, is that local tax is not kept locally? It's all put into a central pot and then under the control of the central government. Do you think that's correct? Because, in other countries I've been to, that's not what happens. Yeah,
that's part of the British system, isn't it? I think there is definitely scope for localised tax, especially business rates. There was an argument that, somewhere like wealthy, like Guildford, for example, raised enough money that could then help some of the poorer parts of the country to get a distribution. So, I sort of go that to a certain extent, but I think there's definitely scope there to allow council
that doesn't require total centralisation, does it?
No, exactly. No. Yeah.
Okay.
And I think by devolving some of those powers to council to raise their own taxes, to spend them, I think it's a motivating factor as well to sort of do more things innovatively.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you for that. And do you agree that the financial problem requires cross-party cooperation? There's been talk of that in the chamber during the debates, but isn't the problem with that it compromises your duty to scrutinise the council?
I don't think so. I think I've been a big advocate of cross-party working on this. I think it's such a big issue and has such impact on residents. We still don't know what service is going to be cut. That's still being planned out and decisions made in the future. But it will have an impact on Guildford. And I think it's our duty, it's incumbent on us as representatives, whichever party are in, to try and work together as much as possible to get the best result for residents. And that doesn't preclude us from criticising, offering different opinions. I think there's too much ERB politics in British politics. There's too much Lib Dems did this, Labour did that, Tories did that. And I think in these times when there's such big issues, we need to come together as much as possible. And like I said, that doesn't preclude us from criticising.
No, but I mean, if there are party politics at play, whose fault is it other than the party politicians?
Exactly. And it's you know, it's up to us to change that, I think.
Okay, but you don't feel constrained to ask awkward questions or
No.
criticize. Okay,
No,
okay,
no. I think it's about people understanding that if I, you know, if I say criticise Judith for something she's done or something I believe that could have been done better, that's not a personal thing, and it shouldn't be a party political thing. It's, you know, it's factual. It's about facts. You know, these are the facts. Do we have alternate facts? You know, it's about
okay.
putting that forward and
But
arguing
it's
it
not always
without
factual, is it? Because I mean, opinion comes into it too. But
an
okay.
emotion.
All right, yeah, and
Yeah.
emotion too, yeah, because
Yeah.
people have strong feelings about things. You know, everyone does. Well,
Yeah.
not everyone, but a lot of
And
people do. But the people
it comes back,
and
it comes back to what I
councillors
alluded
do.
to.
Sorry,
It comes back to what I
councillors
alluded
do because that's their motivation to have joined and become a councillor in the
Yeah.
first place.
But it comes back to what I said, I was alluding to earlier on. Politicians are people as well. So, you know, you got to try and be professional, but try and, you know, use your emotions and those feelings in a positive way. And there's too many times that it gets negative and it's name calling and all the rest of it. And I've seen that in official documents from ministers. You know, it's kind of all levels of politics, and it kind of needs to be muted down a little bit. It needs to be watered down. There's too many important issues in the world at the moment to keep falling back on this trope that we always do.
Yeah, well, I must say, you know, as an editor, I also find that sometimes that affects the way politicians deal with the media too. And I'm not sure. I'm not saying the media is innocent on this either. You know, there are parts of the media that have behaved disgracefully, but nonetheless, you know, there needs to be respect for it to work properly. Okay, mutual respect. I mean, now, given the need. We're going on to planning now. Given the need to comply with national planning policy, how would you have done the local plan differently? Is your group united in their view on the way that planning needs to go ahead in Guildford Borough?
I think broadly, yes. It's I think we're more pro-planning than some people. Certainly for more housing. We need to see more affordable housing and more housing in the borough. We've had
That's easy to say, isn't it? How would you? That's easy to say. You know, we want more housing, but where do you want it? What kind of housing? I mean, a lot of people say it's social housing that's needed. I know that I've spoken to you and other members who agree with that, but actually it's very difficult for Guildford Borough Council to build social housing if they want to. At the moment, we've got this promise of 3,000 houses from the Lib Dems. That just seems like a ridiculous promise, don't you think?
It is tough, yeah, it is. Because when you have like a big development, for example, Wayside Urban Village, the idea, you know, Guildford's policy is 40% that should be affordable housing, and that's not social housing; it's affordable housing. So we need to sort of, and this is where Labour comes in. Labour's talking about social housing as well as affordable housing. We need more social housing. We need more of our developments to include social housing. The Debenham site, you know, there's a lot of sites that are coming forward in the town centre where people say they want, you know, the brownfield sites where people say they want housing to go. We're not seeing any social housing on it. We're not seeing anything remotely affordable. And that's what Labour want to be pushing for. If we had a bit of power and own the government, because it's not just a council issue, it's a government issue as well.
Okay. And I think because at the moment, even if you want it, you don't have the power to dictate to the developers that they've got to supply it, and they can.
It's negotiation and compromise. The starting point in Guildford is 40% affordable housing.
Well, that's the aspiration, isn't it? Up to
exactly. Exactly. I'd like that to be a bit firmer, more than an aspiration, but then you're still working with the market. You know, a developer can say, sorry, I'm not 40% affordable housing is not going to give me the return I need, the shareholders. And that's the system we work and live in. But we need to be more, I think, more strong on that. And we need backing for government for more social housing. However that's done.
Okay. But you hope that your party will change the rules sufficiently to facilitate that?
Yes. Okay. Yes. It needs to be done. There's too many people homeless. Even in Guildford, which is a wealthy part of Surrey, wealthy part of the country, there are people homeless living. I'm not even in my ward. There are cases I've seen which are disgraceful, and it's disgraceful because there's nowhere for them to go because the houses haven't been built. And affordable is not affordable. And that's the key point. Us as a party trying to put forward affordable housing. We all talk about affordable housing. It's not affordable in Guildford. 80% market rates. Right. Social housing is what we need.
Yes.
And you know, we need mixed tenure, but we need more social housing.
Okay. Now, the lack of building height control in Guildford has caused a major controversy. Our small survey in April showed 80% of respondents were in favour of height control in Guildford. but the council seems powerless to resist applications for high-rise buildings. Where did it all go wrong?
I think the problem was Solomon not having anything in place back then. So Solomon went through, it set the level there.
So just so people know, understand what we're talking about, the Solom planning project at the station, the railway station.
That's right. Yeah. So that I can't remember when it came. Was it 2018 or 19, just before the election?
Yeah, it was before. I think it was 2018, as far as I recall. Yeah.
Yeah, I think we had no powers to reduce the height. We wanted to see much less density there, but it went through because we didn't have it in the local plan. We didn't have that kind of restriction. As a result, now that's kind of a benchmark for future development. It's hard then to argue and to fight the case for lower heights.
Yes, because it has a ratchet effect, doesn't it? Or it can do.
Yeah.
And one applicant says, "Well, you've done it there, so why can't I do it here?"
That's it. Yeah.
But do you think then that the ship has sailed and that it's too late?
I think it comes down to compromise and negotiation. I think as we've seen in the North Street resubmission. But again, people talk about wanting to develop the brownfield sites. There's a limited amount of brownfield sites, especially in the town centre. And to increase density, basically the only way is to go up. It's trying to get that balance. What works in Guildford, what doesn't work in Guildford. Obviously, what's in when you look in Woking, that wouldn't work. It doesn't work in Woking. It won't work in Guildford. That's too high. But we need to kind of get a balance between what's just about right for our need in town.
But isn't democracy important? If the people of Guildford don't want these high-rise buildings, why should they be imposed on them?
Of course, that's where the compromise comes from. If
it's not compromise, is it? They're just not listened to.
It's not listened to, but
well, we're going to get the high-rise buildings, aren't we?
Yeah, but how many people don't want them? That's the thing. How many?
Well, as I said, all right, it was only a small survey, but I mean, it seems very likely that, and I'm not just judging it on the survey, on the comments we receive as well, that I would bet my house on the fact that 50% of people in Guildford, at least, don't want these high-rise buildings.
But 50% might do because they want to see more, say, affordable housing, more stock. And it's kind of the job politicians kind of gauge that and trying to work. That's where democracy comes in.
Yeah, but how do you gauge it then? Have you
gauged people?
Okay, and in your opinion, so you're talking to people in your ward. They're at least half of them are happy with the high rise.
Yeah, I mean, I think people not happy with, say, 15-story megaliths. Obviously, that's something on the fight. Okay. 6, 7. People see the reasonable. 6, 7. Okay, it's a bit high, but they'll say, it's not. I don't want any high-rise buildings. What they don't want is really high-rise buildings. The 15-story, the Woking jobs.
Okay, all right. So, what's the future now for Guildford Labour? Can they ever be a significant force in Guildford politics?
I think so. My feeling is that the demography of Guildford is changing. It feels some areas feel a lot more London. There's a lot more sort of London people have moved in, and they sort of bring them a different sort of viewpoint, different politics. I sort of cited the Stoke example earlier on. There are other areas as well. And I think, like I said, we've got a really good team. We've got a good team on the council. There's only 3 of us, but it already feels a lot more vibrant than it did before. There's a lot more to build on. In our local CLP, the Constituency Labour Party, there's a lot of people that are really hungry to do the work, to represent the population and get involved. So that kind of enthusiasm, we're hopefully going to turn into seats. But the 4-year election cycles, anything could happen in the next 3-4 years.
Okay. Some people might be worried about that London comment because they don't want to be part of London.
No, it's not part of London, but it's people from London moving into town.
Okay.
And that actually brings new energy to the town. It's not necessarily a negative thing.
No, but they might want to just retain the character of a county town as opposed to a London suburb.
What does that mean, though?
Well, it means different things to different people, of course.
Exactly. So I think it's a really good blend of that
one
county
thing
town.
It probably means to quite a few people is no high-rise in the town centre.
Again, you can argue the point over what high-rise means. A London high-rise is not going to go in Guildford, and we'll all fight that.
Okay. All right.
A six-story block with a nice shop underneath and social housing, mixed tenure. That'd be great.
Okay. So do you think, a final question, do you think politicians should make themselves available to reasonable interview requests from the media in order to comply with the Nolan principles of accountability? I'm asking you this because, as I think you know, and as I've said in other interviews in this series, Julia McShane has failed to respond to our invitations to take part in this series of interviews.
I think ultimately it's a personal choice, but as a leader of the Labour group, I think it's advantageous to you and to I to sort of come to talk to you and speak to you and let people know what we stand for. I know Julia's very busy at the moment and there's lots going on, so I don't know what the ins and outs of what's happened there. But I think as leaders of the council, leaders of the groups, it is incumbent on us to talk to the public. Like I said earlier on, it's about talking to people, and that kind of interaction is key to this. You need to,
I'm
share
sure she is busy, but I've been inviting her to be interviewed for about a year now, and you know, it hasn't happened. Do you think that is living up to the Nolan principle?
It's probably not what I would do.
No. Okay, fair enough. Okay, well, Councillor James Walsh, thank you very much for your time on the Guildford Dragon this morning, and I hope that we will be interviewing you again in the future.
There's plenty going on, Martin. I'm sure we will.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank
Bye.
you. Thank you.